Yeah, I think we might be looking at this wrong. Should the Warriors keep him? Should you let him walk? Should you give him 25? Should you give him 30? What do you do about Klay Thompson? How would you feel if Klay wants to leave? I don't know that. I feel that. I feel like enough clues have been put together. I feel like, I want to really emphasize the word feel. I don't know this. I feel like Klay Thompson wants to play somewhere else next year. And I wonder how that affects the conversation for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, we won't know until it all goes down, but I don't fault him if he does want to play somewhere else. It's been, last couple of years have been tough for him. He hasn't played great. Fans have been critical of him, rightfully critical, and things have not been as smooth. And then you get to the start of this year, and the reported offer that he received was one that might have been a little bit insulting to him. So you get through all that and another year and no playoffs, and you think about free agency for the first time, and might be time for him to go try something else.
Here's what Shams Charania said on FanDuel TV earlier today.
The Magic can open up in excess of $60 million in cap space this offseason. So there are going to be players, when you think about free agency and other moves that can be made. You look at scoring. In Game 7, obviously struggled a little bit to score the ball, especially in the second half of the game when the Cavs and Donovan Mitchell kept coming for them. So you look at the point guard position, but also shooting and scoring on the wing. And one name to keep an eye on, Klay Thompson. I'm told there is mutual interest between the Magic and Klay Thompson. Thompson, along with several other vets around the league, are looking at the Magic as a situation where if you plug in a guy like Klay Thompson, you plug in another veteran player, whether it be at the point guard position, the shooting guard position, this team can make a real jump around Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. Both guys, Paolo Banchero already a star, already a guy that's been a part of Team USA. Franz Wagner has the ability to potentially be an all-star as well. But if you plug in some more shooting and scoring, I think that's what can take this Orlando team to another level.
Franz Wagner or Franz Wagner? I feel like you got to do one or the other. If you're going to use the W sound, then just call him Wagner.
Wagner.
Don't call him Wagner. That doesn't make any sense at all. If you're going to get into the whole deal, it's Wagner.
It just depends on how you're going to do it. And this is, it's not a pet peeve, but we can talk about all different pronunciations of all different players from all different countries, and you got to decide how you're going to do it. And if you want to go the German way, then it's Wagner. It's Franz Wagner. And that's just what you go with. Forget the W and go with the V.
Joel Embiid.
Right.
Joel Embiid. Anyway, that's an aside. No aside. Let's stick with this. How would it change your thought on everything related to Klay Thompson? Some of you already want him gone. Some of you are team big three. I found this one to be a little bit of I can see both sides type of a situation for a little while, but I've had my eye on Klay Thompson all year long for what it is that he's thinking. And can we all agree he's the hard one to figure out? Steph Curry is just Steph. You're like, I don't know if you have a bad day. Draymond, if you're ever wondering what he's thinking, just take a breath. There'll be a podcast about it.
Right.
Klay, I got no idea, man. He's got a dog, a hat, and a boat, and he does things, and it all seems to be very inside. Introverted guy, inside his own head. What's going on in there? How about some clues? Let's start with this. Klay speaking at the end of the year, his dad speaking with us, his head coach speaking with us. Let's start with Steve Kerr, February 13th with us.
It means that I think Klay is starting to reconcile everything that's happened, between the injuries, just the way the last couple of years have gone. I think, really he's had a hard time these last couple of years trying to do that, and I think it's starting to happen. Part of being effective later in your career when you've slowed down a little bit or you've had some injuries like Klay has, part of that is embracing and accepting those changes. And if you fight them like Klay does sometimes, then it's just going to lead to frustration. But you can understand it. He's played at such a high level for so long, and imagine being able to do what Klay has done over the years, and then suddenly you can't do it as often. I mean, there's huge frustration that comes with that. But I just think he's starting to understand things a little better. As I said, kind of reconcile them and be okay with things. And you saw the way he played last night. He's been much more patient, more solid. The last week or so, and that'll pay off for him.
Steve admitted to us about a month ago that they had to have 4 closed door meetings,
right,
one-on-one. And you'll never get either of them to tell you what was talked about, but we're not dumb. You put 2 and 2 together. Listen to what he's saying. He just said right there, imagine being able to do what you once could do, then not being able to do it anymore, and fighting that like Klay sometimes does. That's what Steve just said. Yeah. So what that tells me is Klay Thompson does not want to accept, or at least early on this year, did not want to accept what was reality, which meant fewer minutes, a lesser role, a bench role, whatever. He did not want to accept that. And it took as many as 4 closed-door meetings between him and Steve Kerr before they could get to some kind of middle ground. That does not mean that Klay now has reached a point where he loves it and is all for it and has any interest in it going forward in his career.
And he had to, quote, reconcile, as Steve was saying, reconcile with the reality of where he is and what his new role is. And it's hard when you were a certain player on this team and now you get deeper into your career and you're coming off the bench and you're not getting the same amount of playing time and the same looks and the shots aren't going in as much. And it's hard. It's frustrating. So for Klay to have to reconcile with that reality, I'm sure it took a lot of meetings, closed door meetings with Steve Kerr to try to figure out and realize what his role was and take a look at the future. And when the contract offer comes in and it's not what he would have wanted, and Draymond Green gets a 4-year deal and Klay gets a reported 2-year offer, I'm sure he was feeling a little bit hurt.
Absolutely. Some kind of way, for sure. All right, so that's breadcrumb 1. Just for me, this is kind of the puzzle that I'd like to, or I've put together. I don't know if it's the puzzle, but it feels like it to me. Breadcrumb 1, Steve Kerr says we had to have 4 one-on-one closed-door meetings. If I told my kids we need to have 4 closed-door meetings, by the 3rd one, they'd be like, I don't want to talk to you ever again. Okay? So that's breadcrumb number 1. Here's breadcrumb number 2. Guru just referenced this during the crossover. His dad, Michael, comes on with us on April 9th. Listen to the way he answers questions about the forthcoming free agency.
I don't really talk to Klay about that because I don't want to put that kind of burden on him or pressure on him or bug him about it. I'm sure he thought about it enough, so he doesn't need to hear that from me. I just wanted to have fun today, be in the present, and not worry about it. Just think about the game tonight to try to help get his team into the real playoffs, out of the play-in. So, no, we don't talk about that. I keep that business stuff, that side away from the family.
Okay, keep that in your back pocket for a second. Quote, we don't talk about that. He said it twice. We don't talk about that. We then asked Michael, would Klay be open to playing for a different team?
I haven't asked him, guys. I'm not trying to evade your question. I haven't asked him about that. We just look at it now. He's a Warrior, and nothing else matters right now.
Okay.
Now, he's a Warriors right now, and nothing else matters.
I remember the day.
Yeah,
you remember the day. Yeah. You remember where the conversation went after this, and I know how most people translated it. Oh, Willard and Dibs, you guys you're poking, you're prodding. He's not going to speak openly about free agency on the radio. I just want to really stress this to everybody listening. That man's my friend. I know that man. I did a show with that man for 3 years. I sat directly across the table with him. You think maybe we ever had a conversation off the air too? I know that man, and I don't want to betray any trust. I can't sit here and tell you what they are actually thinking. Here's what I can tell you. He's never answered that question like that ever before in the history of Klay's career. He's never, ever answered the question that way. Never.
Ever, yeah. Privately or publicly
he
with
has
you.
Openly gone on Twitter within the last year and said, what are y'all talking about? Klay's a dub. Klay's never not going to be a dub. That was on Twitter during this last season.
Right.
And now we don't talk about that.
Right.
Breadcrumb too.
Yeah. And the breadcrumb is especially poignant because you and he are such good friends. And it's not like he would come on the show and say, well, yeah, he's shopping around and, Klay's looking to find his next destination. He wouldn't have answered like that. But to be so dismissive and to be so quick to put down any notion that they've even talked about it, as close as those two are, it was more than curious.
They talk about that.
Right, all the time, I'm sure on the daily.
They talk about that. All right, next, Klay Thompson, exit interviews. Off-season priorities. This is a week later, April 17th.
Obviously, you want to keep winning. I mean, when you've been a part of winning seasons, you don't really want to go away from that. So would like to win again. One for the thumb would be nice. I still think it's in reach. It's just going to, take a huge effort. But other than that, got to think about that. What will really make you happy in the last, few years of your career?
Okay. So he talks about two things, winning, and he talked about what would make you happy. And it starts to dawn on me that we have really never, certainly not this year, heard Klay Thompson say out loud, you know what would make me happy? A new contract with the Golden State Warriors so that I can finish my career with my brethren, Steph Curry and Draymond Green. That's what would make me happy. He's never said that.
Right.
Why has he never said that?
Well, he's never had to say it.
You can say that.
Yeah.
Well, but now would be the time.
Yes, it would be.
Draymond said it. Steph says stuff like that. Steph said it about Klay 3 weeks ago. But Klay keeps talking about, I've got to figure out my mental health. And I keep going back to the same thing, which is I feel like Klay is done being compared to his former self. That's got to be really hard. I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. Like, dude, that's the only way Warrior fans are ever going to look at you. You can go up and be good. You can go average 20 a game, and we'll be like, remember that time you used to average 24? Remember that?
Where's your 37-point quarter now, Klay?
Remember when you I know you averaged 39% from three. Remember when that used to be 43? Remember when you used to make $43 million for the Warriors?
Exactly.
Do you remember?
Now you're making 22.
Remember when you guys used to win all the time? Remember when you didn't have to go to the play-in tournament? Remember that? I get it. I get it. I think he's probably exhausted. I think it's really hard. I think he figured out mostly how to handle it, but I don't think there's any way it'll ever be totally clear. And it feels in my belly like he wants to play somewhere else.
Yeah, and I don't hold it against him. I look at what he's done with the Warriors and where he is in his career, and it makes perfect sense. And you want to go out there and get a certain amount of respect that you probably won't get here because you're still going to be, the lesser of the two Splash Brothers. And if your contract comes in where the Warriors probably want it, then you're going to take a massive pay cut by your same team as opposed to, going out to a different team. And if Orlando gives him the same contract that the Warriors reportedly offered him, that's not a pay cut. That's just a new contract with a new team.
Right.
But if you take 2 years and $48 million here, well, now you're going from $42 million down to $24. That's a pay cut.
Well, that's an interesting way to look at it.
But if you get that same contract from a different organization, it's not really a pay cut. You're just going to a new team.
Again, that's an interesting. Interesting. You can look at this however you want. Klay Thompson's not going to make $43 million a year, so he's going to take less money. He's not going to have a choice, and I think he gets that. But I do think we've been told by Bobby Marks more than once that a person of his skill set on the open market who scores the ball the way that he does, right now the going rate is usually in the neighborhood of $30 million. And the Warriors offered him 24 and did so in sort of a half-hearted way when they were freely paying others. And it's clear to me that bothered him. That hurt his feelings. Orlando probably will. Orlando will probably offer him 30. And if the Warriors won't go past 24 or 25, I think that Paolo Banchero and Klay Thompson are going to be teammates next year.
I can't see the Warriors going up to 30.
No.
I can't see them going any higher than they already reportedly did, because that would take them out of the ability to add any other piece. And they need to improve this team, first and foremost.